What is it going to take to bring this deal in now versus later? I'd done it so much, I almost started to think it was kind of just what you do, like it's healthy. Yeah. But the funny thing is, the long and short of it was we found that these types of end of month, end of quarter, end of year behaviors are costing companies a 27% dip in revenue.
Hey y'all, welcome to Selling with Social, the podcast that helps marketers increase marketing qualified leads, sales reps to shatter sales results, and sales leaders to grow as leaders. Each show, we interview sales, marketing, and social media practitioners, leaders, and influencers to help you connect, close more deals, build stronger relationships with clients, and improve your sales productivity. I'm Mario Martinez Jr. You're now listening to Selling with Social. Gabe Larsen, man, I am so excited to have you here on Selling with Social. Thanks so much for joining us today. You are obviously someone who's very well known, especially the head of research, Sales Research Labs. Is that what it is?
That's right. Yep. We call it Inside Sales Labs over here at InsideSales.com.
And its goal and its focus, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I've had an interesting journey, but I've been doing this probably just for the last 6 months to a year. We wanted to get back to some of our core, and we felt like thought leadership and research was part of that. And so we established Inside Sales Labs just as the research and best practice arm of InsideSales.com. And so my job is to actually notate, get down, answer the questions that, as a salesperson, I've been doing sales for 15 years. And sometimes I was been consulting or out on the road, and the thing we're going to talk about today has always interested me. I always felt like there was something weird going on at the end of the month, but I could never quantify it. I didn't know what was going on. So that's what I'm trying to do, is actually answer some of those things and then get it on paper.
Gotcha. So you've been with InsideSales.com for a while, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, in startup terms, probably, I'm going on 4 years here. Previous to that, I spent some time at Accenture, Goldman Sachs, and was overseas for a handful of years with a company called Gallup. So,
okay. Tell us, our audience, we've got sales, we've got marketing, we've got sales enablement, we've got entrepreneurs, we've got the whole gamut of folks that are listening. Just tell us something about yourself that we couldn't find by looking at your social profiles.
Well, because we're in the golfing mode, I don't know if you saw the Masters, wrapped up obviously this weekend. I'm not a great golfer, to be honest, but so my saying here is I actually almost died golfing.
Literally?
Yeah, it was drowning. I almost drowned.
What happened?
I was about 6 years old. I was golfing with some of my buddies here locally, and this one golf course has an irrigation ditch that flows right on through it, and the irrigation ditch was all mossy. I hit a ball in, was dinking around, tried to get it out, and I couldn't get out of the irrigation ditch. It had, 3.5, 4 feet walls. I was 7 years old. I almost drowned. I couldn't get out, but I finally got out about 200-300 yards down the way. But it's pretty scary. Long time ago.
Interesting. You should write about that story. Near-death experience. What is it like as a 6-year-old? Are you afraid of water now?
Well, I'm afraid of golf. That's why I'm so bad, I think. Maybe that's why I'm so bad. Dang it. That's it.
You're so bad. When you first started talking about golf, I thought, he's going to say he's an expert golf player. But quite the opposite. Interesting. All right. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I'm a horrible golfer as well. I hack. People ask me, do you golf? And I say, I hack.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm not too far from it. But I do enjoy being outdoors, and it's such a lazy sport. You just ride around that you can't complain too much.
Yeah, exactly. Well, fantastic. I'm excited to have you and InsideSales.com as part of the program. And you also have a podcast as well that services the sales community, is right?
That's right. InsideSales.com, we've been focusing really on the sales, both inside and outside. And as we produce some of this research and as we go around, I'm still on the road often. We wanted a way to get it out to the audience. So yeah, for about 6-7 months now, we launched the Sales Acceleration Podcast, and it's been a blast. I know you've been doing it for a little bit longer, but I love to chat, and sometimes I just do an episode by myself, just kind of a rant cast, if you will, but love it. It's been a blast.
Well, I think the key here is, as our listeners are listening to this discussion, we're going to have some really good topics. The topic today we're going to talk about. But what I really love about folks that have moved into like the research side of things, or the folks that are helping to deliver solutions and platforms and technology to the sales community, is from folks who actually have been tried, true, and tested in the field. Right. And that's where you came from. And so I see a lot of content that's pushed out. I read a lot of stuff. I watch a lot of videos, and there are some great folks that are out there that have really done a great job branding themselves. But salespeople always ask the question, yeah, but have you ever done this yourself?
Right.
And that's one of the things I'm really attracted to when I pick folks as part of the podcast, is folks have actually done it, who've lived and walked in our shoes as salespeople. And I think that's just a much more attractive component for sales folks to say, okay, what you're about to tell me is actually legit because you've actually been in my shoes, and you're not going to buy all the hype, if you would.
Well, and I think one of the problems is, I've only been doing this for 6+ months, and I think you got to be careful. You don't even want to lose that, right? I mean, if you're not on the front line, or you're not feeling it and doing it and experience it, I'm starting to already feel like I'm losing my mojo. So I've already found my way back into a couple of deals just to get on the front lines again, because it's not like you can leave it. If you're going to talk about it, you just got to be always part of it. So I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, it was funny. I was actually speaking with somebody recently. It was on the topic of, all right, well, you've hit the status of digital sales influencer. That's really cool. But are you really still connected to the sales process? And I said, are you kidding me? I run my own company. Who do you think is doing the selling?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you actually have to do it on your own. True.
Yeah, it's like 18 years of direct sales experience in corporate. If I go in and be an entrepreneur for a year, it does not mean that I stop selling. Like, that just is not going to happen.
Yeah, fair. Great point.
Any case. Well, listen, you guys put together, InsideSales.com, put some research together on time-based closing strategies. And the title was actually Time-Based Closing Strategies, the High Cost of Procrastination. Interesting research report. We're definitely going to put the link into the show notes here for people to download. So if you don't have access to it, no worries. We're going to make sure you have access to be able to download this. But do me a favor, Gabe. Tell us a little bit about, what were you guys thinking? Why did you put it together? And why should we care?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so jazzed about this one, Mark. I mean, this has been, as I said, when they put me in this role, I have a handful of researchers that report to me, and I'm the only one who doesn't know how to do random forest algorithms and whatever else they do. But I mean, I've done sales, right? And so I have these questions I've wanted to ask, and one of them was, what the heck's going on at the end of the month and the end of the quarter? If you've ever been a salesperson, and I've done this, and I've heard people at InsideSales.com do it, sometimes they'll be on the phone, and they'll kind of get, their voice will just get a little bit softer, right? And they'll say, Mr. Prospect, if you wait just a couple weeks till it's end of month or end of quarter, I can get you a better deal, right? Or, and I know you're smiling because we've done it before, but we've also unnaturally pulled deals that probably shouldn't be closing this quarter, this month, because of this time-based event that we've basically built up. So we go to a prospect and we say, hey, what do I got to do to close right now? I mean, right. I'll give you my firstborn child. How about that? And so we kind of drop everything to give it to him. So I'd experienced this long enough, and I wanted to see what is actually happening. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it good for the rep? Is it bad for the company? And so what we did, we have access to what we call Neurolytics. It's our big data engine. So every time a company works with us, we capture their data. And so we actually have 100 billion sales data points that I can have my researchers start to dive into. So we took a small slice of the 100 billion. We looked at 9.8 million sales opportunities across almost 200 companies, 151 companies. And we said, what is going on at the end of the month and end of the quarter? And we found some pretty cool stuff.
Interesting. I've seen it before. It happens a lot in the technology industry specifically.
Totally.
Definitely the SaaS and software space, without a doubt. But overall, this is a general issue. But also, we hear that the sales leaders start out every conversation as you're getting inching towards the end of the month or inching towards the other quarter, especially at the end of the year, go to the reps, pick up the phone, call them up face to face. So what do you think it's going to take to get this deal to close?
That's a great line. What is it going to take to bring this deal in now versus later? I'd done it so much, I almost started to think it was kind of just what you do, like it's healthy.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is the long and short of it was we found that these types of end of month, end of quarter, end of year behaviors are costing companies a 27% dip in revenue on average. And somebody like yourself, somebody like myself, right? If you've led a sales team, I mean, it's always hard to hit your quota. It's always hard to hit that annual number. If I came to a leader right now and said, I could boost your revenue by 27% just by not dicking around on the last day of the month, or last day of the quarter. I use that word jokingly. Probably that's maybe inappropriate, but I mean, that's a big number. 27% is a big number.
Yeah, that's a pretty massive number. So it's interesting. I want to dig into this report here, but I was on another podcast. Jeez, I can't remember who were we talking about. This topic came up, and it kills me. It pains me how compensation plans are designed to create this counterproductive behavior by both sales leaders and sales reps to actually drive them, coach them, build skills around closing deals to make sure they happen at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter to help the company hit its revenue objectives. And it's an interesting balance. Like this is this hard balance. Company, especially if you're public, you're trying to hit a certain level of numbers, right?
That's right.
And so you're trying to do things to bring these things in. And in some cases, it might make sense. Maybe there's a deal that could be brought over from one area to the other. But overall, I do know something about the report, and it was talking about when buyers are ready to buy and understanding that particular point in the sales process and understanding how to actually go about closing a deal at the time that the buyer is ready to buy as opposed to giving away 27.21%. So this is an interesting topic here, and I hope everybody that's listening tunes in right now just because there's going to get some real depth inside of here as it relates to what you shouldn't do. And hopefully, Gabe, you can talk to more of as well to leaders. What advice will you give them at the end on how to not create this type of behavior?
Yeah, because and I think that's obviously what's most important, right? Because if you dive through the report, just to summarize two other points, I mean, some of the data is interesting, but it's the so what, okay, wow. And that's usually when I've gotten a handful of responses, via LinkedIn or a couple of emails, and people have just said, wow, I didn't even know. And so a big thing we're trying to shoot for is just trying to say, hey, let's boost that awareness in a way that is actually acceptable to the market, right? Two quick points, so I think are interesting to mention. One is on that last day of the month, the deal size drops 35%.
Wow.
In comparison with other days. I mean, again, you've kind of felt it. I've probably felt it. That last day of the month, deal size drops 35%. In addition to that, your win rate, right? Your ability to close a deal drops 51%. So these are huge numbers. So again, overall, we're losing potentially 27% revenue. Why? We drop our deal size almost in half and our win rates almost drop in half. So we really are doing some bad behaviors at the end of the month. But to your point, it's a little bit of, okay, so what can I do about it? I'm a public company. I'm a sales leader. I got to hit my numbers. What would you recommend doing? And I think it's a pretty tough question. It's not easy.
Yeah. Well, not only is it tough, but I think this issue, buyers are now trained as when to buy. This has been created. The buyers were like, man, we'll hold off to the end of the month, end of the quarter, or even the end of the year. And let me tell you, there was a deal that was going down last year, 2016, that I was competing against, our company. And one of our competitor digital sales consulting firms had a bid out there, and they dropped their price. They called up the decision maker. They dropped their price by 73%.
73? Oh, so that's double even what we see on average. Wow.
But here's the pitch. The pitch they gave, which I love this pitch. It was so black and white. It was so textbook, that we're trying to get in 15 brand new logos of strategic accounts. And you're one of them. And so as a direct result, we're going to give you this deal.
I love it. Yeah, I love it.
But the reverse was the customer was like, you were going to sell this to me at 73% higher price.
I know.
And now you just dropped your price by, what does that say about your actual platform and your
the value
that it's going to bring to my sales organization? What happened though? Take a wild guess at what happened. Did he go with the deal?
I mean, I assume they probably did.
Did not go with the deal. Went with a higher priced, my solution, that was double what it was that they would have paid with the 73% discount.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and we don't know. I mean, to your point, a lot of reps go first to price. And sometimes, I mean, that's a great example, is something you probably shouldn't do. And that, when we've gone back to try, that's such a great story. And I think it gets to the value. And that'll be one of the things I want to talk about, moving from a time-based event to a value-based event. It's not easy to do, but I think it's one of the things we got to find a way to get there. But when we kind of dove more into the qualitative piece here, we've tried to figure out what are the three main culprits that are actually causing this. Number one is just sales reps. And those are those times on the phone where you say, hey, if you wait a week or two, I can get you a better price. That happens, and it's just the sales reps procrastinating the sale. Number two, it is coming from sales leadership. It's right. Compensation strategies. It's market pressures, but it's sales leaders having to just say, you got to pull this in. And then number three, and I'm glad you brought that up, it is absolutely the customer. I had, and tech is probably one of the bigger problems. Yeah. I had one of these customers we interviewed. He said, yeah, Gabe, you know what? Especially with tech, I wait till Sunday night, the last day of the month or quarter, 11:59 p.m. And he's like, I'm getting 44 to 70% discounts. I know these guys, their margins are high anyways. And so I'm pushing them to it. So we have also educated the customer about that. So those are the three people who are kind of problematic. I guess the question is, how do you start solving it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll tell you one more story before we get into how you solve that and some of the details. So we were buying a piece of software for ourselves. I'm not going to mention what software it was because they're now a good partner of ours. But we were buying a piece of software. It was the end of the quarter and the special deals came out. Yeah. And so, of course, as soon as you know that the special deals come out, now there's room for negotiation and there's more specialness that can be had, right? And so I waited till Sunday at the last day of the month, the last day of the quarter. Turns out sales rep and sales manager were out and about. And the sales rep who I was communicating with was out hiking somewhere in the woods. So as I'm emailing, as I'm trying to make the deal happen, he couldn't get to it and he couldn't get his proposal out. So what he had to do is he had to call his sales manager and say, I'm stuck. I can't get this. Can you do this? And he's like, I'm stuck. I can't do this. And so they ended up giving me the offer for the next day, first day of the new quarter. And I got the whole offer because they couldn't get the deal done because, of course, they trained me. They trained me, the buyer, to wait until the last day of the month, last day of the quarter, on a weekend, on a Sunday, exactly what I was willing to do. I was willing to drive this down, and I still got the deal on the next day, on the first day of the quarter.
And you still got the same pricing, right?
Got the same pricing.
I'm glad you brought this one up because it's even these numbers get significantly worse if the last day of the month or quarter falls on a weekend. So just check this out real quick. So your win rate, again, thinking about the last day of the month or quarter, your win rate is 73% higher on weekdays versus weekends. And your deal size is 83% higher on weekdays versus weekends, meaning if you find yourself on a Saturday or Sunday working on the end of the month or quarter, goodbye. I mean, It is just, you are just going to lose your soul. You're just going to have to give it all up. I mean, it sounds like kind of that's because people are scrambling and the customer's mad, you're mad. It usually just doesn't work out. So watch out. I usually tell people based on this data, don't have your salespeople work on the weekend if it's the last day of the month because it's just not going to work.
Thus the article I think you wrote an article on your profile about why reps should not work on the weekends, right?
That's right.
I got it
out there.
We'll make sure we include that from your LinkedIn profile, that a link back to that article here in the show notes. I think.
Well, it sounds like, Mario, you've experienced some of these types of stats very personably over your long tenured career.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting. So I didn't have the empirical data, and I want to just repeat. I think you said if the last day of a month or quarter falls on a weekday, what was the percentage of win ratio?
Yeah, so the win rate is 73% higher on weekdays than it is on weekends.
Wow.
And it's 83% higher when we talk about deal size. So if deal size falls on a weekday, and we're talking about last day or last month, it's going to be 83% higher on weekdays than it is on weekends. So again, that last day, if it falls on a Saturday or Sunday, you're losing even more than you do just generally.
Interesting. So didn't know these numbers, former vice president of sales, but I would always tell our reps, if you're going into the weekend, unless we're talking about a gargantuan deal, unless it's the gargantuan deal that everybody's incentivized to have that thing close, you're not going to win it. So just move on, let it go to the next quarter, stop throwing out money, stop throwing out discounts, just move on. So would you say that strategy is an effective strategy?
I mean, I've talked to probably 10 leaders about that. And one said, Gabe, every, end of month quarter, we're bringing pizza in for our inside sales team to stick around on Saturdays. And the funny thing is, just like you said, intuitively, I've felt like this is maybe not the best thing, but here's the problem that we're seeing. It's this euphoric effect in the data. At the end of the month, what happens is that I do actually close 3 times more deals than I do throughout, basically the average day of the month, right? So there is something happening at the end of the month. I'm winning more deals. The problem is my win rate drops so much. I lose 11 times the deals on the last day of the month in comparison with the rest of the month. So Some leaders are like, that's not true. I win so much more deals on the last day of the month. You do, but boy, do you lose a lot more. Now, truthfully, look, people are cleaning out their pipe at the last day of the month or last day of the quarter. I get that, but it's not 11 times.
Yeah.
It's not. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah. Well, and also to your point earlier, you're actually making your deal size smaller, right?
Way smaller, significantly smaller.
Inside the report, you talked about days of the week,
right,
that actually affect your loss rate.
Yes.
And your closing ability, your closing ratio. Can you talk a little bit about that? I was very intrigued by this Monday through Friday analysis that you guys did.
Yeah, interestingly enough, and it fits with the concept of time-based closing strategies. And, this one's a little harder to wrap your head around, although when we've looked at activity data, meaning your ability to contact a busy decision maker, it's mimicked almost this 100%. Well, not quite 100%, but very closely. So the idea is similar to an end of month or end of quarter, we find similar patterns in the week. Mm-hmm. So what that means is the very end of the week, Saturday and Sunday, it's atrocious. Your win rates, your deal size are the worst. Friday, then, when we move into the weekdays, happens to be your worst day to close, and your deal size is going to be significantly worse then. When it comes to your best day to win, it's going to be actually Tuesday. Tuesday has a 15% better win rate than Friday. So now, again, you kind of scratch your head and you're like, why is that, Gabe? Truthfully, why that is, Mario, is because we studied 9.8 million sales opportunities, and that's what the data said.
Okay.
Outside of that, when we've asked some of these busy decision makers, they've kind of generally said, hey, look, Mondays, I'm swamped from everything I've got from the weekend. I've got all these emails. I'm not even thinking about talking to anybody. Fridays, I'm trying to get out of the office potentially a little bit early, my family, my friends, whatever it is. Don't want to be bugged. Certainly don't want to stay late to help some sales rep make their number. So you have these optimal days, and truthfully, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are your best days to close a deal.
Right.
I know it sounds a little bit weird, Tuesday being the best, but that was kind of some of the qualitative feedback that they mentioned as to maybe why you'd experience some of these types of numbers. But you're right, it's kind of odd. Like, is there really a best day to close a deal? Well, there is, but kind of odd as to why.
Well, it's actually, if you think about the best days to prospect, there are a number of studies that are out there that show the best days to prospect. Some of them say Wednesday, some of them say Thursday, but they definitely show that Fridays and Mondays are, one of the.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
optimal, right? So it's interesting that you mentioned that. The study that you presented, I don't have any empirical data in front of me right now, but I do know that when I used to lead teams, the best days of prospects that we used to choose were, I think it was Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those are the best days that we chose. And that was based upon empirical data that we could find published by various different entities that showcase when people are going to pick up the phone. How about that? Correct. So it actually coincides well with the fact that when you're actually potentially going to reach someone to actually when you're actually going to reach someone to close a deal. I don't think that the stats are too far behind there. And that makes a lot of sense. But this data is interesting. And it's actually got me really excited because as a salesperson, knowing that the better days to close are going to be obviously Tuesday, but midweek, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, certainly That's Tuesday right. being your best one based upon the data that you've presented.
Yep.
That when we are speaking with customers, one of the things I've always done is I ask them when they're trying to make their decision. We talk about what are the milestones that we're going to do before we get there, when would they like to have this completed. And generally speaking, they usually pick a time frame, and it's an arbitrary date. There's no usually impending event. Sometimes there is. What happens if you don't? So as a salesperson, would you recommend that as we're speaking to our clients and as we're looking at and having this discussion about when something might take place, the event, that we start looking and timing this for Tuesdays, start timing this for, okay, we'd like to have this complete, let's just say the month of April. The last day of the month is April 30th, which is Sunday. So I would say on April 25th, which is a Tuesday, we would like to have the contract signed. Are you okay with that, Mr. Customer?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, so the answer is yes. And it's a weird thing to start doing, but I'm so glad you brought up the prospecting thing. That's exactly, we have some of that data, right? I mean, you could just spend all your time throughout the week prospecting, or you can kind of get to the times where people are contacting or picking up their phone more. So I promise it probably won't change your whole world, but in sales now, we're looking for the 1% increase. If I can increase your contact or your close rate by just a couple percentage points, that's a game changer. So a couple things I liked what you said. One is we've got to move away from our time-based compelling events and move to their time-based compelling events.
Sure. Yeah.
Wow. That is so much more empowering for the user. So you build a close plan and you say, let's talk about your time-based compelling events instead of mine. That's one way we start to solve this. Secondly, though, you start to even optimize that slightly further by saying, why don't we align this around when I know people typically are more ready to basically dive in and sign a deal, and that happens to be midweek. So that's step one, your time-based, building a close plan. Step two, optimizing it around some of this data.
Well, and also one other point, Gabe, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm putting on again my VP of sales hat here, which is when you're speaking with your customer, why not say to them, all right, now that we know that our goal is this particular date, Tuesday, April 25th, as an example, is there anybody that will be out of the office on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, or how about that entire week? And if so, who will be out of the office, right? And then you can really start mapping out the milestones that you have to achieve as, well, Johnny will be, and Susie will be, and Billy will be. Okay, well, we need to then make sure that they're bought off by, we can pick the previous Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
And start developing your closing strategy and making sure that your client is actually bought into that particular timeline. Does that sound like something that salespeople should do?
100%. I mean, the more organized you can get around that close plan, and the more you can start being aware of some of these deficiencies around the end of the month or even end of the week, I think it's probably not going to transform your sales process. But as you add these baby steps, it is going to give you an extra percentage point, and that means something. I think it means something.
I wonder if you look at sales organizations, inside sales organizations, field-based sales organizations, have leaders operationalized, literally in writing, an actual close plan?
No.
This isn't a big problem, right? You talked about the 27% reduction. What was the number? 27.8?
Yeah, so you could increase. If you solve these problems that I talked about at the end of the month, you can increase revenue by 27% on average.
So part of the problem is, in terms of this time-based closing strategy of trying to close at the end of the quarter, end of the month,
right,
is because there is no closing plan, period, in most cases.
Well, what is the closing plan? It's the end of the month or quarter. I mean, that's it. And again, this is a little bit of being a salesperson. I got to watch because I'm now talking about my own blood here. But we all know a lot of times this is it. If it doesn't happen for you at the month or the quarter, then it happens for you at the end of the year. Everybody does this, and your close plan becomes centered around that time-based strategy, and it's costing you a lot.
Well, and also too, if leaders operationalized a close plan, or a salesperson actually operationalized their close plan, then you would never have to worry about when deals are going to come in. You would know, because what you would do is you would actually present it back to the customer. You would present it back with the timeline, get their buy-in that this is what they're interested in doing. If we meet all your needs, is this the timeline that would work for you? I just want to confirm that I understand that, right? So that you can get buy-in on the way through the sales process to actually increase your revenue. And as you said earlier, for any of the leaders that are listening, man, or even sales reps, man, imagine if you're on an annual contract value, quota, ACV, TCV, revenue base, whatever the number is, just imagine if you can decrease the 27%. I mean, if you can get back a portion of that 27% that you lose by trying to close deals at the end of the quarter.
Yeah, no, I mean, it'd be ginormous. I mean, I can't think of a sales leader who wouldn't want it, but I think some of the things you teased out, one is the close plan, we need to have it because again, it aligns around their time-based strategy rather than ours. But number two, I still have seen close plans go bad if they don't have value. And I know that's a little bit of a buzzword, value-based sale, but I'll bring a little bit of the challenger model in here, but if you have that close plan and you are getting into that teach, tailoring, and taking control, where we're setting things up around revenue increase, we're talking about hitting some top line or bottom line numbers, and we're showing how consultatively we can implement a technology or deliver a service and then optimize the environment around that. If our conversations are more about that, I promise you they won't slip back into, well, it's the end of the month now, do you mind closing a deal? They see the value, they'll buy it any time. Now, again, value-based selling is a whole conversation of itself, but a closing plan that is built on a value-based model that really hits them where it hurts or where it's important to them, those are the types of things I think we've got to start to get away from these problems.
Interesting. You got a lot of great stats inside of this report here, and I think it's valuable for the salesperson as well as for the sales leader. Any other stats or empirical data that you gleaned from this study that you did that would be of value to our sales community? I know we talked about the amount of revenue that you could probably increase. We talked about the days of the weeks. We talked a little bit about, I think, your drop rate, your win drop rate at the end of the month. Anything else that you think that might be of value?
Nope, you got it. You nailed it all, right? So you're looking at weekly, monthly, quarterly. You're looking at deal size and win rates in particular and seeing which days and times are most optimal.
So we've talked through this. We've talked through a couple of strategies on how to fix the problem.
Right.
So how do you fix the problem? Give us some more details on that.
Yeah, so the couple that we've talked about, right, is it's kind of rep focused, right? So one is you got to get that close plan. And I think if I'm a rep and I have a close plan, I work around their timeline, that's one strategy. Number two, we talked about customers. We've educated customers negatively now. We now have to start educating them on value. And I think that's where the value concept comes in. Rather than talking to them about time and them talking to us about time, you got to put that fire out as soon as it starts. And you've got to start talking about not time, but revenue. What can I save you? What can I get you? That value-based conversation is going to be huge. The next thing is the sales management problem. With the sales managers, Mario, some of them, you hit this with compensation. We talked to some people and they literally are doing pizza on weekends the last day of the month. They're doing spiffs, whoever gets the most closed deals on the last day of the quarter, revenue goals for the last day of the quarter. There's these games, there's these incentive policies. And again, when we looked at these different companies, the average revenue of these companies was right around 250 million. So these were, in some cases, very large companies. This isn't just for little mom and pop shop. Right. We're all doing this in some form or fashion. So we've got to stop the incentives, the gimmicks, and the motivation that last day of the month. We need to rethink compensation. So a lot of companies are still paying on just revenue, dollars in. So as a sales rep or as a sales manager, I don't care. As long as it's $1, it's going to help me get to my ultimate goal. Now, if I'm paid on margin, or if margin is affected, am I going to drop my deal size 35%?
Yeah,
probably not if I'm paid, there's some portion around margin. And so we've been really encouraging people to not just think about dollars in, but also think about margin. And then lastly, and I don't mean to just throw the kitchen sink at you here, but there is an awareness piece. And this is probably my biggest hope for this whole study is that we've all known it. We've all kind of felt it. Let's just start the dialogue. What I hope is that we can get more visibility into the pipeline. I hope that a CRO can sit with a CEO or sit with their sales leaders below them and say, guys, let's not just pull every single deal that's supposed to close next quarter into this quarter. Let's look at the ones that we really potentially can get and be open to pulling some deals in and maybe dropping our price 5% or something. And let's be open to pushing some deals because we know that when we push, they're healthy deals, our overall or annual revenue will increase, and therefore we all end up making more money. But we need the awareness and we need the visibility into which deals really, not all of them, I promise it's not all of them, which deals really should we push and pull each month. And right now, I don't think sales leaders know. In fact, I've sat with them. They don't. It's an all or nothing. What can we clean out of our pipeline? No. Which ones should we and should we not? And I think we got to get there.
Well, and I think the fundamental problem as to why this issue exists is because there's not enough opportunity that is in the pipeline.
Yeah.
And so you've got sales leaders that are trying to pull things in way in advance of when it's really due.
100%.
In order to be able to meet the focus of their revenue number or quota, whatever it might be. So there are systemic problems that exist behind this. And that is, either marketing's not doing their job to create opportunities, marketing qualified leads, or sales is not doing a good enough job to generate sales qualified leads. But I think you hit the nail on the head with leaders really looking at the opportunities that are in the pipeline and understanding, they need to understand what actually is going on in this deal to determine whether or not it's a real deal that can be brought in, as opposed to the $1 million question that's always asked by any sales manager, director, vice president, and above is, hey, I see this big giant deal in the pipeline. It's got a 50%, 60% close ratio. Yeah. What's it going to take to close that deal? You ask that question. That's the wrong question to ask, which is, what's it going to take? How about you say, tell me about this deal. Where's it at in the process? Who are the decision makers? What's going to stop us from being able to close the deal? Who are the influencers? Who's against us? Who are the champ? How about you whether you want to do Miller Hyman blue sheet this thing, whether you want to do challenger sale, get some strategy behind this before you say, what's it going to take to close this deal just because it has a big number on it.
I've kind of thought, I've obviously thought a lot about that. May be the biggest problem. It just is exactly what happens. With these opportunities, we don't know what's going on with them. And a quick email to a sales rep isn't going to cut it. And that's partially on us as an industry and as a technology provider. We're working to get there where as a sales leader, I need to be able to see that opportunity and all the stuff you said. There's lead scoring. Why isn't there really valuable opportunity scoring? And I'm talking about hundreds of data points, company, purchasing behavior, decision makers, people involved in it. We got to give leaders more visibility besides just subjective guessing. And we're not there. I know a lot of other companies working it, but we're getting close, hopefully.
Well, which leads probably to another problem for definitely another podcast, which is the sales reps aren't putting the data into the system to actually do some opportunity-based scoring. And sales leaders don't want to make them required to do because they're extra closers.
I know. Give to get. We're going to have to find a balance because you're right. Sales reps right now, it's like, I hate using CRM because it doesn't give me anything. But if we could get to that place of give to get, we're getting there one step at a time.
For sure. And also too, with buyers, I think also if there's anything that salespeople and sales leaders should walk away with, especially from this discussion, is we need to untrain buyers to think that the best time to buy is at the end of a quarter or at the end of the year or at the end of the month, right? It's even in the car industry. you go to buy a new car. When are you going to buy it? At the end of the year.
I just did it. Seriously, I waited till the last day of the month. But
exactly.
People have posed it to me, and I'd be interested in your opinion. How do you untrain buyers? It's now been years and years. They're smart as can be. How do we untrain them?
I actually have spent a lot of time thinking about that. And first off, you do a couple things. You mentioned it earlier, that you align and design a compensation plan that is around revenue-based multipliers. Number one. Number two, margin. You give the rep, you say you've got your margin, all of our product sales or service sales need to be between 60 and 100% margin, all right? Go for it. All right, well, if you sell every deal at 60%, which is, by the way, president level approval, you've got that ability, you just cut your compensation. If we were smarter with aligning compensation behind the behavior, that problem systemically will go away. In addition, if you are going to be giving discounts and services, I think tech leaders, especially in the tech space, leaders, we need to start putting out our mid-month or beginning of month closing deals, right? You start putting them in the market, different types of opportunities to be able to save money at different times of the year, different times of the month, different times, even do it by day.
We got to confuse them,
exactly.
When's their end of month? It can't be the 15th.
Yeah. And the buyer says, well, I thought the best time to buy would have been the end of the month. No, actually, you missed that. It was the beginning of the month. What? Who does that? Right? Confuse the heck out of the marketplace. And I think if people actually, I'm saying that actually kind of jokingly, but there's some seriousness to it.
Yeah. Keep them on their toes a little bit. I think there's something to that, but it is, you got to do something because, man, customers they're full on board with it. They know all about it. So we got to do something.
Well, and also too, I think it's also better coaching. Again, if you're a VP, CRO, CSO, director, or manager, the one thing that we know we do when we're low on opportunities for closing, we're not going to hit our number. We're trying to bring anything in. We go immediately to our CRM system. We run a report of what's forecasted to close, what's in the pipeline. We look at everything over 60%, and then we send out our messages or do one-on-ones with our sales reps and say, all right, I saw that you have deal ABC for X amount of dollars. What's it going to take to close that deal? My recommendation is stop asking what it's going to take to close that deal. Understand what actually is happening in the deal first to determine whether or not it's closable. Then you can have that. And I think that requires coaching, and that really should come from the sales enablement side of things, or sales operations, wherever the training comes from. And you've got to have in that sales enablement role, in that operations role, you've got to have the tenured sales leaders that have killed it in sales in those roles, helping to do that type of coaching, because it doesn't come from somebody who's only been on the operation side. But that's another podcast.
That's right. I mean, someone's got to coach these guys, and in sales, unfortunately, often we kind of let them hang, and so they go for the low hanging fruit, which is, Mr. Prospect, if you wait a little bit, we'll get you a better deal. So if you coach them to be better, I think they will be better. But awesome. Easier said than done.
This is a fantastic conversation, Gabe. I've learned a lot. I think, and hopefully those listening will have gleaned something out of this. Tell us a little bit about the research team. Who was part of the research for this particular report?
This one all the way to the top. We do our research often in cahoots or in conjunction with a university here. It's called Brigham Young University. So Dr. James Oldroyd kind of leads that group. And then myself, Dave Elkington, the CEO, and then Ken Krogh, the co-founder or president. We kind of round out the top, and then we have an awesome research team led by Brian Perry. So those are the four people who really dug into the data. Man, we spent 3 months, and we've been spending a lot more time doing on the follow-up, because now we're trying to figure out, with leaders, interview them, why is this happening and how can we solve it? So you're getting some of the latest interviews. And I've got some funnier stories about what managers and reps are saying and doing, but we know it's happening. We just got to figure out how to solve it. And again, my big hope is education and awareness. Let's at least start the conversation.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Gabe, a couple last questions. If someone wants to get a hold of you, they want to connect with you, they want to ask you a question about the report, what's the best way to reach out to you?
I'm trying to be more active on social, so LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And I've been having so much more fun on Facebook, to be honest. So you can find me at Gabe Larsen on Facebook, Gabe Larsen on LinkedIn, and Gabe Larsen on Twitter. And then certainly check out our research at insidesales.com/research.
And we'll make sure we put this report, a direct link to download the report or to actually get access to it inside the show notes as well. And Gabe, I know we're coming up here to the end. I love asking all my guests just a question or two that is on the creative side. But for you, I want to know, what is your all-time favorite movie?
My all-time favorite movie.
Could be motivational, could be just all-time in general.
Yeah, probably Pretty Woman. I'm a Pretty Woman guy.
Wait, you know what? That's funny you say that. As soon as you said that, I was like, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I don't know why, man. I can't believe I just said that. I should have thought about that more. Probably.
Is it because of Richard Gere or is it because of Julia Roberts?
None of your business.
Yeah, right.
I don't know, man. It's just, my wife she can't handle a lot of, big action-packed movies. And so I always end up watching these kind of soft, love stories and stuff. And so Pretty Woman, I mean, we watch it so many times that, yeah, I like it now a lot. So.
All right. Well, if we need to cut that out of the show, we can cut that out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to rethought that. It's not very manly, but it's the truth.
I love it.
Seriously, ask my wife. She'll say the same. That's funny.
That's good stuff, man. Well, listen, Gabe, you've been a fantastic guest on Selling with Social. I want to thank you for joining us very much. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. We will definitely be publishing this out. And for all of those who want to get in touch with Gabe, make sure you connect with him. He's fantastic, awesome guy, super smart, and he's spent a day in the life of in your shoes. No, I made that. That's wrong.
I think we know what you mean. I've been there. I've been there once or twice.
You've been there once or twice. How about we'll say that? Gabe, fantastic having you on the show. Thanks so much, my friend, for having it. And for all of you listening, stay tuned for this next message. Thanks for listening to the Selling with Social podcast. I'm super pumped that you are our guest today. Here's what I want you to do right now. Go to jr.com/podcast and support our podcast, please, by distributing it out anywhere you can get it to on social. And don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes. You'll find all the instructions there on the site on how to subscribe to the Selling with Social podcast. Until the next show, keep on rocking. Mario Martinez Jr. out.